At the beginning of most concerts or shows or performances that we go to, we hear a familiar speech. Someone stands up in a high place where everyone can see and hear and announces something for public safety. Something like, in the event of a fire, the alarm will sound, and this is your sign to evacuate the building immediately. Please proceed in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest exits. Do not use the lifts. And once outside, make your way to the assembly point. Know where your exits are. Plan your route of escape. People are planning exits all the time. It's a cyclical skill for human beings. Knowing when and how to go is important. So while preparing for today's sermon, I did some reading about exits, specifically exit strategies. It's one of the most talked about things among entrepreneurs. There are tons of advisors and books and courses and companies that can help you plan an exit. The problem is now that I've done all of this research, my social media feeds, they're filled with information about investing and accelerators and finding circles and, or rather funding circles and launching a career as an entrepreneur. But in my research, what I learned was the importance of being ready to sell your company. You see, running a business is dangerous and uncertain, and the longer you're engaged in it, the more likely you are to get burnt. Selling off your business, selling off your business gives you opportunity to liquidate, to realize the assets that you've built up. And the smart business person exits with a profit at the right time in an investment. The concept of getting out at the right time permeates the way that we work in the 21st century. But really, this way of operating has been around since the beginning of time. In fact, ending is one of the major themes for this feast day. Simeon was waiting, working in the temple, looking for his time to take his leave. God had promised that he would see the consolation of Israel before he died. So when Simeon took Jesus into his arms, he saw the right time to get out. He'd gotten what he'd been waiting for. And in this passage from the Gospel, we find perhaps the most famous line in all of Scripture about exiting. Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace. It's one of the most quoted lines from the Book of Common Prayer, sung at every evensong, sung just a few moments ago by the choir, and oftentimes at funerals. Simeon was ready to go because he got what he wanted. And Simeon, who we only presume, by the way, is an old man, Scripture doesn't say that he was, but Simeon saw in a vision the road ahead. And that road was filled with disappointment and disagreement, rejection, and pain. Hey, no one wants to stick around for the bad stuff. Leave before things go south, before things get out of control. The right kind of exit requires timing. And the best timing, you see, gives you the best outcome. The best exit gets out before the fire consumes, before the business tanks, before the gallows man comes. Oh, but what we see in the life of Jesus, it's an exit strategy that doesn't follow these principles. In his life, Jesus had done some pretty amazing things, right? He'd brought healing, taught new ways, and shaken up the establishment. And he should have gotten out while the getting was good. Made the right kind of exit, been a winner. But God's plan for the investment that God made in humankind, in human terms, was the worst kind of exit you could have made. It went against every piece of good advice that I'd read online, you guys. When Jesus had reached the peak performance of his evangelizing, instead of examining the mergers and acquisitions market, maybe joining up with other prophets and rabble-rousers, instead of looking to the future well-being of his employees, his disciples in this case, the product, the environment he was in. Instead of keeping his options open, Jesus persisted with the same tactics he'd always used. And in the eyes of many, Jesus drove this movement well past its sell-by date. But surely God has learned his lesson now, right? God won't be fooled again. God has seen where not exiting will get you. And God won't let this kind of thing happen again. But you know what? This is how God operates still. God intentionally abides by this model, this way of nosediving to the end for humankind. My friends, God doesn't have an exit strategy for you. God isn't looking to move on to the next project. God isn't looking to protect God's self. God isn't scaling up for an exit, building up profit. God's investment in you is a love that will not let go. If you're wondering where God is at this time, when things seem to be taking a turn for the worse, if you're wondering how much longer God is going to take an interest in uninteresting you, if you're wondering what will happen if you continue to fail, to collapse, to disappoint, here's the answer. Through the entire journey, whether or not you think it's advisable for God to do so or not, God is going to walk with you in unprofitable times, down paths of despair, on the road to failure, all the way down and to the lowest point, even to death. And even then, God's not pulling out. God doesn't make an exit. The God of love goes there, right there, and without resentment or regret, says, I'm not leaving you here alone. And that, my friends, is God's antithetical exit strategy.